Story time. I want to tell you about the Dreaming Women. Not too long ago, there was a story that was apparently quite popular called Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. This story was told in cinematic form in the United States in the late 1950s. What we now realize is a sad commentary on our society is the fact that it won many awards. Why sad? Let me tell you. In the story, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, there was a man, one of the seven brothers, who decided that he needed a wife, and so he went to a neighboring village to look for a wife. While looking for a wife, he came across a woman who was very hardworking. She was doing many chores for her father, and he stopped her and tried to flirt with her and to invite her out on a date. Because she was so industrious, she said, "I can't talk to you right now. I have to finish my chores." This just got him more excited about talking to her, and when he finally did talk to her, he immediately proposed. Now, before proposing, he failed to disclose some important facts about himself and his lifestyle. So directly after the marriage, he took her to his home where she discovered that he had 6 slovenly brothers. These 7 men lived like untrained beasts inside of their hovel they called a home. It was dirty, it was filthy, the laundry wasn't done, they didn't know how to cook, and they were completely uncouth. But her husband said, "Oh, well, I married you because I could see that you were so good at chores, and we have so many chores to do, and so I brought you here to be our maid and cook and servant and take care of us." Now this woman, this first wife, realized this wasn't a nice arrangement, but she didn't really quite have the consciousness to realize that the whole concept of marriage in these circumstances was a bad arrangement. So she decided, you know what these men need? They need more wives. I cannot be the wife taking care of 7 men. They need 7 wives. And so let us get them married. So she proceeds to do the emotional labor of teaching these men manners and social graces. And then she takes them to the next village over where they proceed to look for wives. But being rather unmannered men, instead of seeking out women who were available, they decided to pursue 6 women who were already betrothed. They began to flirt with these 6 women, but the men that were betrothed to them got quite upset and challenged them to some fisticuffs. The uncouth men were bigger and stronger and ended up badly beating the 6 fiancés. And not only that, but they destroyed the entire farm, the entire barn that they were raising for. It was a barn raising party that they went to. As a result of this, the people in the village were very upset with these men and wanted them to leave. The men decided then to kidnap the 6 women and to take them off with them out into the country where they lived. When the first wife found out that these men had kidnapped these women, she was outraged, and so she kicked all of the men out of the farm, the homestead, and told them they had to live in the barn while she lived in the house with these unmarried women. And at this point, you might think, oh, this is going to be a feminist tale. These women have become conscious, and they're standing up for themselves, and they're saying no to kidnapping and SA. But no, this was a Hollywood movie written by one gender only. So what happens is that after some time has passed, the first wife becomes pregnant, for she had been previously living with her husband before kicking all the men out. And the first husband is so upset about her making all of the brothers live in the barn rather than engage in non-consensual marriage, he runs off and leaves. So she sends word to him that she is pregnant with their child, and he decides not to come back anyway. 9 months go by, she gives birth to the child, she sends word to the husband, "I've given birth to our child." He finds out it's a girl and says, "You didn't give birth to a boy, I'm not coming back." So we see what kind of story this is, right? But you know what? It gets worse. The fathers in the neighboring village, outraged about their daughters being kidnapped, have spent these last 9 months looking for them, searching for them, hoping to bring them home and save them from these uncouth men. And after 9 months, they finally find them in this remote area in the woods in this farmstead, and they emerge into this clearing, and they say, "We're here to save our daughters. Where are our daughters?" And in what can only be explained as a male fantasy, the women all say, "Oh no, fathers, we don't want to be rescued. And in fact, that child there is our child." And they all claim to be the mother of this one child. And because a woman who has had a child is forced to be married in these times, the fathers were like, "Oh, well, if you've already had a child, then we're not going to rescue you." And so then the men come out of the barn and they all marry these women. Really? Award-winning film, but I'm going to retell that story, and that's the only reason I told you that story, so that we could retell it. In the retelling of the story, we have 7 crooks and 7 dreaming women. Now, the 7 crooks include the Naked Emperor, Starboy, Theos, Rasputin, Bozo, and 2 more yet to be disclosed. And the dreaming women include the Empress, the Magician, the Wise Elder, the Seer, the Teacher, the Empath, and the Mystic. And in this story, these 7 crooks are also conspiring to gain something without work, just like the 7 brothers. And they enter into a compact of sorts where they agree to help one another to engage in the largest grift of the century. As so happens with crooks, sometimes the more you have working together, the more conflict there is. And so over time, these crooks began to fight amongst themselves. For while they initially thought their interests were all aligned, as time went on, they realized that, maybe not. Together, they worked to allow the Naked Emperor to unfairly win a joust that he was not qualified to win. But after the joust was won, the Dreaming Women popped up. And the Dreaming Women were dispersed throughout the realm. And they were the ones, some of them, who had been woken up at a certain time at 4 a.m. the day after the joust. And some of them were seers and prophets and hoodoos and brujas who had had gifts their whole life, but became aware the day after the joust that something was very, very wrong in the land. And although in the past there were dreaming men and dreaming people of various genders, and in the past most of the people who got most of the notoriety, who published most of the books, who were on all of the television shows and on all the platforms, tended to be dreaming men, it just so happened that after the joust, the planets arranged themselves in such a way that we had the rising of the divine feminine, and as such it was important at this time for the dreaming women to emerge. And some of these dreaming women were people who were just suddenly woken up at a particular time, and some of these dreaming women were women who were doing other work, some for money, some for service. Some of them were healers, some of them were psychics, some of them did readings for people, some of them taught people how to do readings, and they were all engaged in their various disciplines and specialties until that fateful night. For on that night, guides came to these dreaming women, woke them up in some cases, or kept them up all night in my case, and spoke to these dreaming women and said, "We have a job for you to perform." And these women had to put aside and step aside from their regular work to a certain extent. They had to set aside some of the obligations they had to their family to a certain extent, and they had to embrace fully this path, this direction that had been given to them by their spirit guides. For it was determined that it was their job to help to reveal to the people the truth of the giant grift of the 7 crooks. It was their job to help people to understand that this would not hold. It was their job to give the people hope so that they would not be in despair. And it was their job to spread the messages throughout the realm, here and there, near and far, to raise people's vibration so that people could get ready to bring about, to visualize, and to bring about a whole new world. To be continued in part 2.